Welcome, Bankless Nation, to this edition of Alpha Leak, formerly known as Meet the Nation, but we are now calling it Alpha Leak because it's just a hotter name. Today, we are talking about Shibuya. Shibuya is a brand new content platform out of the hands of pplpleasr, the famous NFT artist behind the X × Y = K NFT from UNISWAP v3, and many, many, many more NFTs beyond that. We've also brought along two of her co-founders of Shibuya, Maciej and Jacky, and I get them to tell the story of Shibuya itself. And Shibuya is a kind of a content production studio, but instead of a director, instead there's a DAO. And that is where this story gets really, really interesting. Emily and her fellow co-founders are devs and artists, and they have been charged with the creation of the story, but who determines the outcome of the story or where this story goes is up to the discretion of the DAO members, of the token holders who stake and make the producers actually have express the choices that the community wants. And so this is decentralized storytelling. This is storytelling by the community, and then the producers actually tell the story. And so if you want to check this out while we're going through the show, you can go to the website. It's shibuya.xyz. That's shibuya.xyz. You can go watch the first chapter of the story, and then you can stay tuned to watch the remaining chapters of the story after token holders determine what the story actually is. This is like a kind of a choose your own adventure type story, but built for the Web3 metaverse world. And we've talked about this concept before on Bankless, where previously you would have the artists on stage producing creativity, producing music, producing art, and then it being consumed by the community. But with the power of tokens, gives the community voice and the ability to actually give back, reverberate their interests back to the artist and say, hey, we liked this, but less so of this, so you should go in that direction. And this back and forth content creation, this back and forth creativity between artists and community is, I think, going to be a very fundamental part of Web3, a fundamental part of the metaverse, and it's platforms like Shibuya that are enabling this to come into the future. So we're gonna go and talk to pplpleasr and Maciej and Jacky from Shibuya. But if you are interested, you can definitely go to that website. Again, it's shibuya.xyz, and then the Twitter account is shibuyaxyz without the dot on Twitter. So you guys can go follow those directly there as well. There will be a link in the show notes, so you can just go click that if that makes things easier for you. So let's go ahead and get right into the conversation. But first, a moment to talk about some of these fantastic sponsors that make this show possible. Living a bankless life requires taking control over your own private keys. And that's why so many in the Bankless Nation already have their Ledger hardware wallet. And brand new to the Ledger lineup of hardware wallets is the Ledger Nano S Plus, a huge upgrade to the world's most popular hardware wallet. With more memory and a larger screen, the Nano S Plus makes it easy to navigate and verify your transactions. And the paired Ledger Live desktop app gives you increased transparency as to what is about to happen with your NFT. What you see is what you sign. The Nano S Plus gives you the smoothest possible user experience while you're doing all of your crypto things. So go to the Ledger website to check out the features of the new Ledger Nano S Plus and join the waitlist to get yours. And don't forget about the Crypto Life card, also powered by Ledger. The CL card is a crypto debit card that hooks right into the Ledger Live app, right next to all the DeFi apps and services that you're already used to doing, like swapping tokens and staking. So if you don't have a Ledger hardware wallet, go to ledger.com, grab a Ledger, and take control over your crypto. If you're going bankless, you need MetaMask. This is your tool to unlock the world of DeFi without giving up custody over your private keys. MetaMask is both a secure in-browser wallet and also a secure bridge for your hardware wallet. You can now trade tokens on any DEX or aggregator. MetaMask Swap gathers real-time pricing information across all the DeFi exchanges, allowing you to select your best price while getting all the MetaMask benefits of self-custody, lower gas costs, and increased transaction success rates. MetaMask also has a fantastic mobile wallet that I use when I'm out and about, which I use to collect POAPs, NFTs, and do all my DeFi things while I'm away from home. If you haven't downloaded MetaMask, you gotta try it out. Web3 wouldn't be the same without it. Download MetaMask for desktop and mobile at metamask.io and load up your Trezor, Ledger, Lattice, or Keystone hardware wallets so that they too can get into the world of Web3. Polygon is Ethereum's largest and most vibrant scaling solution to date. With millions of monthly users and all of the biggest DeFi apps, the Polygon ecosystem has turned into a blossoming metropolis of DeFi activity. Transactions on Polygon are quick and cheap, allowing users the freedom to achieve their DeFi goals, all while being economically anchored to Ethereum. But Polygon isn't just the proof of stake sidechain. The Polygon team is building a suite of scaling solutions, including Polygon Hermes, Maiden, Nightfall, and Zero, all with different design choices in order to be optimized for all possible crypto use cases. If you're a developer who wants to build on the Polygon ecosystem, go to the link in the show notes to check out their fantastic documentation. And if you're a user who just wants to experience fast and cheap DeFi, you can bridge over your ETH or other tokens and start playing around with any of the thousands of applications that are available on Polygon. Welcome, Bankless Nation, to this edition of Alpha Leak, where we are going to explore Shibuya. And so with us on today's episode, we have three of the five co-founders of Shibuya. You guys probably recognize PPLPleasr. She's the person behind the X times Y equals K NFT that rocketed her into fame. And she also has brought along her two other co-founders. We have Maciej and Jacky from the Shibuya project. Guys, welcome to Alpha Leak. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, PPLPleasr, I think people recognize you the most. So I'm going to start with you. Can you just give us the high-level pitch of what Shibuya is? What are we going to be talking about today?
Sure. And I think for the rest of the podcast, we can just not even acknowledge the existence of our other two guests. I'm just so we're building this new thing that we're calling Shibuya. It's named after Shibuya Crossing, and what it really is sort of like a decentralized video platform, but we hope to also expand to other media forms outside of video. And I think probably the easiest way to explain it is we have sort of like a first animated web series that we're launching on Shibuya. It's called White Rabbit, and it's kind of just taking the sort of pick your own path, style of storytelling and bringing it to Web3. And so, for example, our first chapter that we're calling it, you watch this little animation, and then at the end of the chapter, our main character comes in front of two doors, and then behind each door is an alternate ending to the chapter. And to watch each alternate ending, you have to mint what we're calling these ERC 1155 NFTs that we're calling producer passes. And so when you mint one, you can then use that producer pass to stake it in the outcome that you want to see. So, you pick a door and then you can watch the ending. And then, then we give sort of like a grace period for everybody to kind of give everybody a chance to stake their producer passes. And then, when that voting period ends, then whatever is the majority vote, which already happened for our first chapter, would be sort of dictate the plot going forward. And so in this way, everybody who has a producer pass and has also staked it feels like, they have a part in sort of the development and the storytelling of this web series that's currently being built. And at the same time, they will also, get to keep that NFT as like a paper trail of their participation in the project. And also in return are rewarded the valueless governance tokens that we're calling White Rabbit tokens. And currently, they can be using these tokens to do things like vote on, the main character's name in the show, or also right now we have a leaderboard as well, and sort of what we're calling dynamic credits at the end. So when the credits roll, and it's artists, executive producers, and it's all based on people's token holdings basically. And there's also a leaderboard on our site, so you can see who kind of are our top producers and so forth. And so that's kind of a very high level explanation. What we're trying to do here is just to sort of change the way that the stagnant state of the NFT market is sort of stuck at these PFP projects, and we're just kind of coming in and already building something, and we already have content to show and be this is what you're getting into and this is what you're supporting, instead of doing a drop first and then promising some kind of roadmaps later, and also just to kind of change the way that people are thinking about how utility is actually used in NFTs, beyond it just being a JPEG or some kind of membership, or and also trying to decentralize and democratize the way that independent film projects could be funded.
So I'm reminded of these choose your own adventure books back when I was a child, where you would come to the end of a chapter and there were some choices and you could pick which page you would flip to based off what choices you wanted to go. And then the other thing that this reminded me of is Twitch Plays Pokemon, where you have like so many people having inputs into the choices that the main character makes. And so I think I'll throw it to Maciej. Why do you think that this is going to be exciting? Like, why do you think this is a product market fit? What do you think is really going to get the creative juices going on this project?
Well, first of all, in terms of like a long form filmmaking, this is something that rarely ever happens. Like usually when it comes to long form filmmaking, there's a production that's set up. It takes quite a bit of time to find a team, to get things built. You have obviously passionate artists and directors who do short films all the time, but that's like very rare and just takes out your soul basically. I can tell that from experience working on a couple of like my own short films, where it's really difficult to make them and combine that with your like life choices in general. Also, a lot of us are video game enthusiasts as well. Like, there's the gaming industry is huge. It's actually bigger than the film industry. That tells you that people like to play the characters or have their own choices and see where the stories or the gameplay will develop. So I think it was no brainer. Like, as you mentioned, those old books where you choose your own path and you choose your own way of how you want to develop the story. That's been always exciting. And there maybe have been only a handful examples where that kind of type of content has been used in animation or film. So we felt like, it would be very interesting to try this, but also just because the way Web3 works in general and the technology itself allows you to do so many different things on so many different levels, it almost became for us like a playground where it's like, how can we make an interesting storytelling, an interesting story overall, but get the community involved in how this story develops and where it goes. And from that point, we kind of started with choose your own path. Like, you have 2 different doors. Each of them lead to a completely different storyline. Obviously, the one that people choose is going to be the one that's going to develop. So that gets community involved. But from there, it was just like, we sat down and started thinking like, what else can be done? Okay, you can vote for the character name, and then just opens up, okay, when we have that utility, there is so much more that can be done that has never been done before. And I think that's the exciting part in this project specifically in White Rabbit, where it's like, yeah, we can kind of like do whatever we want and get the whole community engaged without asking for some producers, studios, and high-level executives that are basically funding the project to see if our idea jives with where the studio wants to go. Instead, it's just like, it becomes like a grassroots film project where it's just creatives in the community, and we kind of decide what it's going to be. And I don't think that has ever been tried before. I might be mistaken. Obviously, there are so many projects out there. It's very difficult to track the whole internet, obviously. But I haven't seen anything on like a really high creative level with high-end animation where that kind of plays out. And that's probably the most exciting part about this project specifically, but just also like the utility of itself. The leaderboard credits, credits is something that is very easy to compile if you get people involved in the project. But this is like a dynamic credit too, which is also exciting because now that also gives us an ability to play with different things, play with like different ideas. Okay, depending on the level you are, whether you're like executive producer or a producer or associate producer. Fun fact, actually, last place is a production assistant. Just as a funny thing we found, it can give you like a different experiences throughout as well. So there's just a lot of a lot of creative things, not only just level of tech, but just level of animation, where we can kind of get to decide, okay, we can add like the extra interactive layer to a medium that normally isn't really interactive at all. So that's definitely like the biggest part of it.
So with all things, this sounds like the gist of this is like decentralized storytelling. You're allowing storytelling to kind of be pushed to the margins, allowing the users to have say in the outcomes. But also at the same time, sometimes decentralization can be bad. There are a lot of DAOs out there that are just like chickens running around with their heads cut off. And so they actually do kind of need that like centralized leadership. And even with like the choose your own adventure books, like you couldn't make the characters do anything. There were only certain predetermined outcomes on this. And so I'm wondering, like, what on the spectrum of just like complete community control versus some guided outcomes, how much is like, what does the infrastructure actually look like? Like when you guys like start the story, did you guys start like the gist of the story and then you want the community to finish it? Or like, how are you guys giving power to the community, but not too much power? How are you like navigating that balance?
So I think the best way to kind of think about this is referencing, if anybody has seen that one Black Mirror episode on Netflix, it's a one-off called Bandersnatch, and they adopted this sort of choose your own path kind of storytelling model where they pre-shot a bunch of different sequences and then split it up. So, you know, your character could be like having cereal, and then between choosing the two different types of cereal, which they're allowing the audience to do, it leads down to a completely different storyline. And then down the path, it could, you know, sort of like loop back into the same storyline again, or it could just go down, you know, there's people who have like mapped out the entire thing. And so we've done something similar where, you know, obviously we have complete sort of like artistic direction that's already been, you know, dictated already. So we show it to the people, and then, you know, it's kind of like based on their engagement and their interest levels. And, you know, obviously, if anybody has seen Maciej's artwork, it's incredibly, he's incredibly talented. And so, you know, most people respond extremely well to this kind of art style, right? And so, and you know, the community doesn't want to actually do the artistic work. You know, they're not like sitting there like, oh, I want to animate either. Like they want to be fed content and entertainment. But so, you know, we have like sat down and kind of written out, you know, and we are still doing this every day, actually, you know, writing out sort of like the general different possible plot lines, like you can think of it as a node graph and all the different paths that it can take. And just so that we sort of like take the front seat in kind of direct driving the community down this, what we think would be, you know, good storytelling and things like that, but having the community, you know, be a part of, you know, sort of less detrimental decisions, like so kind of like giving them an option or like a palate tasting, right? And not having them create the meal from scratch is how you can think about it.
I love that metaphor. It's like a tasting menu, and that also it makes it so that you guys don't have to go do like 5 storylines of work just for the community to pick one of them, and then you just wasted 4 storylines of you know, production value that you are not ever going to use. But is that the final form of what this kind of vision looks like? Like, in what ways are you interested in like kind of opening it up even more?
So it's not always a binary choice, actually. Future chapters, there's going to be ones where it's not just binary choices, but on top of that, you know, because it is a native Web3 media that we're, you know, broadcasting this on, it's a web series, right? Like, and so we are really trying to take advantage of the fact that it's Web3 native. And so, you know, an example of this is we're like partnering with DegenScore, and you know, they're the guys who are building technology related to scanning, you know, on-chain identity and wallet history. And so you can imagine like one of the chapters where, you know, somebody like David, who's interacted, let's say, with Uniswap a bunch of times, you know, based on your wallet history, you're seeing a different version of the episode than what I'm seeing. And so that's kind of like, you know, things that we're experimenting with and adding, you know, depth to how this kind of storytelling is possible and making it even more interactive beyond just it being sort of like a binary option and choice.
Yeah, I could add maybe what you touched upon in terms of like how scalable that would be in terms of like the taste palette and like pre-scripted decision making. One of the interesting things we already found out working on chapter 2 and chapter 1 is that we actually talk with community and ask like what they feel the story is going to be, like where they think the direction is going and why they made one decision over other. And that kind of like informs us to look at the plot line we have and sort of like the story structure and be experimental in terms of, okay, maybe there's a specific visual cue that we're going to add that is a reaction to what community's expression to what they saw already was. So in terms, yes, it's sort of like a curated experience, because obviously when you're filmmaking, you kind of have to do that to make a cohesive story that holds together, glues together. The characters make sense. They talk, and that makes sense, obviously. And the story concludes one way or another. But there's always like side elements or even just main plot elements that could be changed, whether it's visually or through the audio or through the music or even through the dialogue, where the story still holds together, but it's a pure reaction to how people who engaged the content and wanted to participate on the level of voting and voting with tokens and whatnot, to a point where those decisions can have like a domino effect on what's going to happen later. So as Emily mentioned, we pretty much every day we're kind of sitting and writing. It's because like we do have the story, we do have a structure of what the scene is going to play out, but there's also like, okay, how can we kind of spice it up based on what's happening? And that's the interesting part too, because it's very challenging from a perspective of directing and editing, but it's also like super exciting because you get to like almost crowdsource the outcome with the community, which is great. I feel like artistic projects that combine community input and really like cater to the community itself as almost like a love letter of like, hey, here's a piece of entertainment, but you're also part of it, are probably the most interesting projects in my opinion, rather than just like, hey, here's the content, watch it, like it or leave it. That works too, but it's very rare you find real gems when that happens. So
yeah, I feel like, sort of so many like Hollywood productions or things like that are in such like closed doors, like, they're always like boxed into some studio and people like don't see what's going on, but everybody is curious, right? And so this is sort of like a more transparent way for us to be like, this is how we're making it. And, everybody who's in on this early, like clearly because it's just started production, right? You guys are all part of like the storytelling aspect of it.
Yeah, I just want to add that our Discord community has been pretty amazing. Like people are crazy about potential plots, different scenarios, have all these different theories of what the story actually means. To see that organically grow and people participating and be really invested into the show, it's pretty amazing.
So, you've got some money, but how are you going to use it? You want to spend.
You, me, shopping, now, bro.
When you know you should be saving.
You'll never buy a house at this rate.
But what if you could spend and save at the same time? For the enlightened kind, with inquiring minds, a new world awaits. Set yourself free with completely flexible, self-repaying loan technology. Supported on desktop and mobile, seize the power of ALCHEMIX, allowing you to spend and save at the same time. Leverage your wealth without risk of liquidation. Take out a loan that repays itself. By using yield from your deposit to pay off your balance, your only debt is time. What was once inconceivable is now within your grasp.
You're winning some.
Bankless is proud to be sponsored by UNISWAP. UNISWAP is a new paradigm in asset exchange infrastructure. Instead of a cumbersome order book system where trades are matched with other humans, UNISWAP is an autonomous piece of software on Ethereum that lets you trade any token at the current market price. No human counterparties or centralized intermediaries, just autonomous code on Ethereum. Input the token you want to sell and receive the token you want to buy. The Uniswap Grants program is accepting applications for grants. Do you have something of value that you think you want to contribute to the Uniswap ecosystem? No matter how big or small your idea is, you can apply for a uni grant at uniswapgrants.org and help steer Uniswap in the direction that you think it should go. Thank you, Uniswap, for sponsoring Bankless. The Layer 2 era is upon us. Ethereum's Layer 2 ecosystem is growing every day, and we need L2 bridges to be fast and efficient in order to live a Layer 2 life. Across is the fastest and cheapest and most secure cross-chain bridge. With Across, you don't have to worry about the long wait times or high fees to get your assets back to the Layer 1. Assets are bridged and available for use almost instantaneously. Across's bridges are powered by UMA's optimistic oracle to securely transfer tokens from Layer 2 back to Ethereum. Across is critical ecosystem infrastructure, and ownership is being handed over to the community. You can be a part of this story of Across by joining the Discord and becoming a co-founder and helping to design the fair launch of Across. If you want to bridge your assets quickly and securely, go to across.to to bridge your assets between ETH, Optimism, Arbitrum, or Boba networks. Yeah, I remember during the when Game of Thrones was in its peak, the Game of Thrones subreddit was like one of the most lively spots on the internet, and there was just so much ideating on theory and you know, conspiracy theories and like what's going to happen in the future, and then also just kind of its own culture and its own vibes as well. And what I'm getting out of this is very much aligned with the whole Web3 narrative, where previously in the trad Web2 world, you have exactly what pplpleasr was just saying. You're kind of just like spoon-fed content. Like, here's the story. Like, I hope you like it. And you either like it or you don't. But in the Web3 world, the possibility that tokens have to return voice, to echo back towards the leadership saying, oh, hey, we liked that versus, oh, hey, we don't like that. Or actually just giving them user autonomy to actually be a part of the creative process. I think it's actually a really big challenge, because in the Web2 TradFi world, you had the benefits of just like centralized talent just producing it, and it just worked. And in the Web3 world, we see this potential where we have the talent, which is you guys, the co-founders, but also trying to figure out how to also empower the community, which might be people that are explicitly not talented people. And so I think the challenge that you guys have is, well, how do you guys as artists, how do you enable the good expression to come out of your community? Have you guys thought about this angle and how you guys plan on doing that?
I think we were pretty pleasantly surprised, actually. I think I sort of started in, well, first we have these like token gated Discord channels where we think of it like more of like a writer's room or producer's room, right? And I sort of really encourage people in there to start talking about their theories and, their analyzations of the plot and things going forward and Easter eggs and such. And yeah, it was honestly a pleasant surprise of how sort of much attention to detail that people actually are. And they're surprisingly really good writers too. So maybe we've been really lucky in that regard that we haven't received sort of any super terrible ideas. On top of that, there's always sort of like a comedic element to it. So anything that's like really terrible has always been sarcastic and intended to be a joke, like, oh, we should name the main character Kevin, like things like that. But nobody's actually, giving out really, really bad ideas. And in fact, we really encourage that too. And obviously we have some kind of like filtration system too, where if somebody's like, we want to, make a, not PG-13 film or something, then obviously we can, sort of veto that, of course.
I think the other dynamic here is where a lot of like DeFi Web3 protocols, they need governance for a means to an end, as in they need governance to produce the outcome. But I think with this, like the product itself is the governance. As in, like, this is a governance platform. What are we governing over? The story, but it's about the governance. The governance is the product, and the value of the governance is a function of like how interesting and valuable this story is. I want to put listeners into the shoes of what they would actually expect if they were participating here. What is it actually like if they want to go and consume this story? Well, what's the format? We're talking about like 5-minute short form videos. What should listeners expect if they wanted to actually go watch the story? And then maybe we can actually start talking about the website.
So our users would go on shibuya.xyz. The first chapter that we made, I would say is, probably around like just a little over a minute long. And it's probably a little bit shorter because it's sort of the initial proof of concept that we are releasing to the world, right? And also keep in mind, we did this with zero funding, like it was completely grassrooted. Like our first round of sort of, any kind of support that came in from us, selling producer passes. But before that, everything, we just sat here and, sort of like built it and made the animation without, it was literally just Maciej and I. And so what you can expect is you go on the website and you see this super beautiful animation in the style of Maciej's artwork. And then, and then I would say each sort of like alternate ending are a little bit different in length too, but yeah, roughly just a little over 1 minute. And we're obviously already working on the second chapter. That is expected to be around just over 2 minutes long. And
maybe more.
Yeah, maybe more because, it's constantly evolving and changing. And, based on, literally every day we're like adding or subtracting things into the plot and things like that. We're hoping, if anybody has seen Love, Death, and Robots, those are really, really high quality animated shorts. And each of them are between, let's say, like 6 to 15 minutes long. And we are hoping for White Rabbit at the end of every chapter stitched together to be probably an over 15-minute high quality short film animation.
So with that first episode, that was just you guys setting the scene, setting the stage, not too much governance in that first episode, more governance into the second episode. And then how many governance decisions do you think is going to be happening per episode? Like how many decisions does the community need to make? Or is it just the ending?
Well, for starting from chapter 2 already, we have the voting of the name of the main character. And I would expect that we have a lot more coming in, some of them that we're sort of still working on right now, and maybe sometimes like meant to be a surprise as well. And, there's sort of other things like in the first chapter already, and we're probably going to do this for many, many chapters, is we have these what we're calling Japanese good luck bags, which was actually a wallet that we seeded with some NFTs. So in the first one, there was a 101 people pleaser, a 101 Maciej NFT, a Cryptoad, and a Crypto Dick Butt. So after seeding that wallet, actually, so this was all already very early on. We've planned this from the beginning, and then so we generated the seed phrase for that wallet, and they're actually each word in the seed phrase was hidden in various different parts across chapter 1. And then we actually, upon release, we just tweeted, we didn't even say that there was a seed phrase. We just tweeted the NFTs that are in the goodie bag. And then we said, somewhere in this episode, lies some goodies to be found, finders keepers. And then to our surprise, actually within 2 hours, somebody had figured it out and transferred out the NFTs, which is really crazy. And so we are also thinking that in the future, maybe the governance will also include people voting on what goes in the goodie bags for future chapters, for example.
And how do you make sure? I know I mentioned how like governance is the product, so people should be expecting to go in and make a lot of decisions. But also, how do you guys thought about like things like voter fatigue, or just like, oh, I only really care about these things, I don't really care about the other things? How are you guys managing that?
I think voter fatigue will always exist, and maybe for sort of like DeFi protocols, they're a little bit more sort of how do you say this, like hindering towards furthering governance. But actually, I feel like for what we're doing on White Rabbit or just in Shibuya in general, it might not be a bad thing, because then it will really show you kind of who is truly engaged in the content that's being made, right? We don't want people who don't care. And so the people who really care and are really sort of like devoted, you can think of them as super fans of, just like you said, not everybody's going to go on those Game of Thrones subreddits and go comment, their thoughts about everything. But the people that are doing that are people who care a lot. And this is obviously the kind of community that we are trying to give our content towards. The content is actually essentially going to be free for anybody to watch, even if you don't have, a MetaMask wallet and stuff. It will always be free to watch up until the point where there's a vote happening. But the kind of people that we want to be, minting the producer passes, staking it, and getting the governance tokens are the kind of super fans who really like it because they, really love the content and not just because they're a passive viewer.
So one of my favorite stories from the internet is the story of when, I can't remember who did it, but they let the internet decide who was going to name this one boat. I can't remember where this was, but the internet decided that the name of the boat was going to be Boaty McBoatface. Just because, like, that's what happens when you let some, internet degens, internet trolls, like, name your stuff. Are you guys worried that, like, somebody, like, the people are just going to come in and start naming things or just basically breaking things with governance? Or is that actually a feature because, they're enabled to do that?
I think we're almost it's part of the charm of White Rabbit and this whole project is that we're not taking ourselves too seriously. We have some silly Easter eggs in there, like it starts with in the year 2069. And, kind of the gist of it, or, sort of playing on this whole culture of Web3 in general is just, this kind of mindset of it looks good or it's super high quality, but at the same time, we're not taking ourselves so seriously, like everything in Hollywood, actually. And so I think we're just going to have fun with it. Obviously, we're not going to, we're going to prevent things like naming our character Hitler or something like that. But otherwise, I don't see it as, much of a minus, but rather like an interesting experiment that we're conducting right now.
Jacky, I want to get into some of the dev technical questions of this, which is hard for me because I'm not a developer. So sometimes I don't know what questions I need to ask. But I think the first question is like, in your experience as a dev, how has this particular project been like unique or challenging to you? Like what are the unique aspects about this project that really stand out from a developer's perspective?
Yeah, so this is actually my first Web3 project. So it was really fun to kind of learn, smart contracts and all these different things. And I think the part that actually stood out the most was the tokenomics. So like, you can easily write a smart contract, to generate PFPs and a lot of these things that people have done already. But to design a system with tokenomics to kind of dictate the behavior of your users was very interesting. So like, for example, when people vote, we have a mechanism where if you vote on the winning side, you actually get a 10% bonus of tokens. So these different designs where we can kind of leverage to incentivize different behavior is very fun. And we thought, like, what if people just wait till the end and not vote and then see, which side is the winning vote and then just all vote on that side. So then we also implemented like early staking bonus where the earlier you vote, the more tokens you get. So in a way where voting early and getting it wrong is actually more profitable than voting late and getting it right. So I think other than the technical smart contracts, the website, the tokenomics part really stood out to me as very fun and interesting to design.
So there's two tokens in this ecosystem, I believe. There's the producer passes, which is the NFT 1155, I think is the right EIP. And then there's also the White Rabbit token, the ERC20 token. How many producer passes are there? Is that and that's that producer pass is basically like the funding for the project, right? That's like how you guys are paying for development. Is that right?
Yeah. So there's 5,000 producer passes for the first chapter.
Okay.
And we actually have a bonding curve implemented for the entire show. So like the next chapter, we might have more producer passes for people to mint. So in a way, the ERC20, the White Rabbit token, is a fixed supply. 69 million, 420, 420.
Nice.
But for every chapter, people get the same amount of tokens. So when there's more producer passes, actually you can, you get the most tokens from minting early. So we also want to reward people who support the show from the beginning.
And then the White Rabbit tokens. Talk about the value of the White Rabbit tokens. Why would people want those?
So they're basically valueless. They're governance tokens, right? So having those tokens allow you to, participate in the voting, all the stuff we talked about, be on the leaderboard, and be in a gated Discord, then gated Telegram, and talk to us, give us your input, your theories about the show. So basically a valueless governance token.
I see on the website that once the film is completed, it will be turned into a fractionalized NFT. Maybe you guys are using fractional for that or something. Maybe not.
But then we're using fractional.art for this.
Yeah.
So actually, in the beginning, we created this vault that minted this fixed amount supply of tokens. Mm-hmm. And we seeded it with 2 NFTs to create this basket that can hold multiple NFTs. So what we will do is, in the end of the show, when all the chapters are completed and connected together, we will then transfer the NFT into that fractional vault. So essentially, the ERC20 is a fractional ownership of the NFT.
The NFT of the full length movie, of the full length show. Do the token owners also own the IP to that show, or where does the IP is the IP a relevant variable here?
It's a good question. Right now, we're basically looking at all the possibilities, really. There's also like just general implications in terms of like what decisions you make in terms of IP rights. As anyone who lives in the US, you probably understand how complex IP rights, copyrights, and trademarks are. And so we're very closely looking at what that is and if that's going to be part of the project or not. We usually the way we look at the project in general, just Shibuya in general and White Rabbit specifically as well, is we like to not promise things that we're not sure we can deliver, and instead focus on the things that we know we can deliver and promise those instead. And then everything that comes after would be an extra bonus, literally kind of like that kind of approach. And that stems from the fact that if you follow any of the Web 2 projects, like specifically Kickstarters, there's just so many stories of Kickstarters promising amazing ideas and never delivering. And there's obviously examples where they deliver and it's an amazing product, but for every example of something that worked out and is amazing, there's 100 examples of something that didn't work out and turned into a shit show, let's say. And we by virtue of creating this thing, we completely want to avoid that. We don't want to promise things that we don't believe in. We don't want to build stuff we don't believe in. We don't want to be on the hook of like, hey, give us A and we'll potentially maybe sometime in the future give you a B. It's just not the way we like to operate. We just want to build this platform and the film to be an interactive experience, something new that is just not haven't existed before, and take everyone on the ride, everyone who's interested and wants to participate and wants to become part of not only just community, but like, as you said, the governance of it all, where it's like you're not just participating and consuming content, you're actually actively participating in making the content better than it would have been if it was like spoon-fed to you. So
I would just say, instead of looking at the tokens as, IP, I would more look at it as like a DAO. So like every potential future shows we have on the platform could be its own DAO, where the community can make decisions together, push the film forward, and all have skin in the game.
And I think, obviously this is an original IP by, myself and Shay in terms of like fully creatively, we've created this from scratch, right? And so, but, we're thinking of this differently from, let's say, a PFP project where people might be thinking, oh, if I buy this PFP, can I, put it on a tote bag and start like selling those tote bags? And this is kind of the usual discussions around IP and things like that. But our native media is just different, right? It's a film and it's meant to be consumed. And the main purpose of it is entertainment. And so we're kind of trying to bring it back to the whole concept of people going to a movie theater and they're not thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to profit off this movie? Like they're buying a movie ticket because I want to exchange my time and, however much this ticket costs for some 2 hours of entertainment, things like that. And so this is really what we're trying to bring it back to.
So let's take the perspective of a wide variety of potential users / consumers of Shibuya. There's the the 9-to-5 worker who wants to just come back and relax and see what Shibuya is up to, or there's the internet NFT degen who's in their basement playing with NFTs all the time and they want actually to have deep involvement. Just what are all the ways that people can enjoy this platform, either with just consuming it or actually participating? Let's go through just the full spectrum of how one would engage with Shibuya.
Yes, so if you're TradFi Bob, and nothing wrong with that, but you just like work a 9-to-5 and you're super tired, right? You don't have time to be on the internet all day and you come home and want to just consume content. I do this too. Then you would just go on to Shibuya right now, which only has White Rabbit as the main IP, but we are onboarding more very quickly, actually. And so you would just log on to it. You don't even need to connect your wallet or anything. You can just hit the play button, and it will just play up until the point where there's governance happening. So, for example, if we're on chapter 5 already, you can watch the first 5 chapters and be entertained that way. If you are, internet Chad and you want to be super duper duper involved since the very beginning, then you would obviously, hopefully be already have, found out about this super early and then participated since chapter 1, but, even on chapter 2, then you would go on. And whenever there's a governance, and the plot happening, the website will actually just tell you, whether you're connected to MetaMask or not. If you click on something where there's, sort of a plot or a governance vote happening, then there will be a dialog box that will pop up and be like, connect your wallet, and then say, do you want to mint a producer pass if you don't have any? And if you already have producer passes, then be like, do you want to stake it in, whichever option that you decide? And then after you stake it, there will be some confetti that's thrown in the air, and they'll be like, here, you just earned, X amount of White Rabbit token. And yeah, and then, after that, their involvement will look something like, going to the Discords to participate in token gated channels, or just, yeah, it's kind of like a DAO where people are just really passionate about discussing the plot of this going forward, and what their theories are, and what things that they want to see being voted on, and what they want the governance tokens to be used for. And so I would say, those are sort of like the 2 extreme levels of involvement. There's also the people who are just minting producer passes and who don't stake it. I don't know why you would do that because you should just get some governance tokens anyway. But that's totally fine too. Some people are just like, oh, I think these producer passes look cool, and it's kind of like collecting, because we will have a new one for each chapter. So, and we do actually have something very special planned for people who collect all of the producer passes from each chapter. So it's just kind of like a stamp book, right? You're like, oh, I've collected them all. And so those are the sort of different levels of engagement and involvement that we are seeing.
Are there any like really grandiose ideas that you guys have when you like daydream about the future of this model? As in like, I don't know, maybe some short story, short form movie, maybe not so short, is become so popular that it starts to air in movie theaters, and the token holders have some sort of like participation in the creation of that value that is now eking out of the Web3 world and back into the traditional world. I don't know. That's just an idea that I had. What's some grandiose ideas if this platform is like maximally successful in like 3, 5, 10 years? Have you guys thought like ideated around this?
I think actually maybe one of the really big dreams for us, and it seems like it is quite possible, is, for example, when the whole thing is finished, we can have like a premiere event, or maybe multiple in different cities. And so there's like kind of like premiere screenings. And also we're thinking, sort of like different ways to do this, but either people who have collected the full set or certain amount of RAB token can exchange a premiere ticket that you can attend and things like this. And so, basically just thinking of anything in the traditional sense, that what are sort of like the highlights of the evolution of making a film, right? Usually it's like the premiere, and, just like a premiere is essentially a celebration of the completion of a film. I always like to think of movies as like, they're essentially pop-up companies, if you think about it. It's incredible that, when movies get made, all these people assemble to sort of like work towards the same goal, and then at the end of it, it gets disassembled. But before that, they all have sort of a really happy premiere event, and it is a very grandiose celebration. And so I think that's one of the things that we're really excited about. And, people who are producers or anything are obviously all welcome to attend.
I would just add on the level of credits, I mean, me, like both myself and Emily, we worked in Hollywood and on films and video games. And usually what happens when you watch credits, like at first, like the director, producers, writers, actors, that's kind of given. And then whoever drove them to the set, and then whoever catered the food, whoever like delivered the mail, and the list goes on and on and on. And at the very end is like actually people who made it, like artists and designers and animators and all those other like workers, and there's hundreds of them usually, and it's just like you watch that and it's like it's obviously an amazing experience, especially if you worked on the movie, to sit in the theater and like actually experience it and see yourself in the credits. So like that's what we're kind of expecting to have the community. Like if in our dreams, let's say we have a premiere of White Rabbit in Chinese theater, for instance, in LA, or in some like really nice place where people can go and participate. Like imagine being a person who voted for the name of the character and made multiple votes that actually shaped the story, and you watch it with friends until like, yeah, I voted for that. That's why. And this went that direction. And at the end, it's like, look, that's my name in the credits. I'm the executive producer. And it's just like it creates a memory that just sticks around forever. It's like you're a part of of a project that is just fun. And obviously we cannot predict the outcome of where the White Rabbit's gonna go, how successful it's going to be, but that's not the point for making it. And for someone who worked in the movies for past 10 years, you usually learn that you work on the project and you don't really know if the movie is going to be really successful or not. I'll tell you that from my personal experience, the films that I was expecting, oh my God, this is going to be a hit, flopped. And then the films that I was working on, I was like, it's just another film, just blew up to a point I was like, I don't even want to post work because I'm getting mobbed for doing, like, mobbed in the positive way for doing that, right? So it's definitely like experience building, and we have like really grand ideas, and daydreaming obviously is just, it's just very difficult to conceive like how to get there. So we're kind of taking it step by step. We kind of have like the starting point. We know what we're building right now and what are the immediate steps to continue. Number one priority right now is continuing the story, obviously, of the White Rabbit, and we want to make this as the most excellent experience, and then just experiment with it. And I think those experimentations will also carve different ways in terms of where Shibuya itself could go. So
I think for me, like a big idea is I love seeing platforms giving creators more options and make it easier for creators to actually put their content out there and get seen. I think for now, it's like really hard for independent filmmakers to actually get funding, go through the whole process in Hollywood and get their film made and then premiered. So I hope like if Shibuya does grow further into a bigger platform, then it'll make it a lot easier for creators, filmmakers to actually produce their shows.
Yeah, like almost we kind of also, I think we talked about it, like becoming almost an on-ramp for really talented artists that maybe don't have funding to actually start developing anything, and we can help them with that. So that's like the dream. It's like what artists who learned craft without going to art schools, a lot of them teach after they achieved certain level as a like giveaway to community that helped them to become what they become. Sort of, we're thinking the similar way, but again, it's so far from the peripheral view that it's very difficult to conceive how to get there, but there's always a path. So
I think moving into the metaverse, sci-fi, Web3 future, using this as like a model, we kind of see in the current way that Hollywood is structured is you just have these like very superstar director names, like M. Night Shyamalan, or insert your favorite director here, Quentin Tarantino. And I think maybe in the metaverse, the new version of this, the Web3 version of this, is instead guilds, like the Shibuya Guild, like the Shibuya director, except instead of one person, it's just this nebulous set of people that are contributors, and maybe they have such a strong track record of building really cool stories that they are renowned as a guild, as a DAO, as an org, for producing and directing really, really good shows. And I think that would make you guys something like the production company, or I don't know, like Warner Brothers, I think maybe is the right branding, I don't know. But basically you have like, you are decentralizing the director, but keeping a relatively centralized production company. I think this is the right model. But the final question I think is really important is, what are the key things that you guys need to do as sort of like a leadership team of sorts to really make sure that this project is successful? Like, how do you maximally enable your guys' community to make sure that the outcome of this is you know, something that is actually the right time for this very ambitious project and not something that's like 5 or 10 years too soon? What are the key things that you guys understand, that the key obstacles that you guys need to overcome in order to make this a success?
I think the first one is probably distribution, but we are having sort of very interesting conversations with potential people that can collaborate with us on that field. And the second one, I think, and always the last line of it, is the content needs to be really good. And so, you know, with White Rabbit, you know, we're hoping obviously to make an anime that's very interesting, but also right now we are working, you know, to onboard other sort of content that we find. At the end of the day, you know, when you think of all the really, really good, you know, TV shows out there and stuff, I think really what stands the test of time is good content, right? Like Breaking Bad has like a cult following. Game of Thrones has a cult following. These shows didn't develop a cult following just for no reason. It's because the content is good. Same with Squid Game. You know, who knew? Like, they were not, you know, they didn't have any sort of Hollywood connections or anything. They're, you know, a Korean drama that probably most Westerners, maybe before Squid Game, had never even watched a Korean drama before. And then it became a worldwide sensation. Why? Because the content is good. And so, you know, that's something that we really, truly, firmly believe in as one of our core values, and is what we're laying the foundation for right now. And that is our main priority, is just to make the content really good. And hopefully, you know, when people see that, they will naturally be sort of more interested to get engaged. And, you know, and then on top of that, we're making it, you know, a different type of model where it is free for people to watch. But, you know, if you want to decide what goes on the screens, you have to pay. Same concept in Times Square, Shibuya Crossing. And so that's kind of, what we're gearing ourselves towards.
So guys, I think people by now are definitely ready to finally go and experience this for themselves. So if they want to go watch the first episode, where should they go?
They should head over to shibuya.xyz. It's a pretty straightforward website. There's a play button. Just hit play. And, you know, obviously we'll be rolling out Chapter 2 fairly soon. Or fairly soon, I mean, you know, within the next month or two for sure. And so stay tuned. And we also have a Twitter that people can follow. And then you'll find, you know, where you can find our Discord, and also just things that we're posting, like behind the scenes, and, you know, just updates about the show in general.
And for the podcast listeners out there, that's shibuya.xyz. And then the Twitter account is shibuyaxyz without the dot on Twitter. Guys, thank you so much for coming and demoing Shibuya. I think this is going to be a really interesting project, and I wish you guys the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers. Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head over to Bankless HQ right now to develop your crypto investing skills and learn how to free yourself from banks and gain your financial independence. We recommend joining our daily newsletter, podcast, and community as a Bankless Premium subscriber to get the most out of your Bankless experience. You'll get access to our market analysis, our alpha leaks, and exclusive content, and even the Bankless token for airdrops, raffles, and unlocks. If you're interested in crypto, the Bankless community is where you want to be. Click the link in the description to become a Bankless Premium subscriber today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for in-depth interviews with industry leaders, Ask Me Anythings, and weekly roll-ups where we summarize the week in crypto and other fantastic content. Thanks everyone for watching and being on the journey as we build out the Bankless Nation.